Success is liking yourself, liking what you do, and liking how you do it. Maya Angelou.
Like random strangers would have seen something that they worked on or heard something that they worked on. And that's super cool. But I also think that it's important to remember that there's more to life than that. And there's more to your artistic practice than that. And that's certainly not admonishing those achievements, because obviously that's awesome. If you've worked with Beyonce, that's objectively really, really fucking cool. But I also think that it's important to, remember why you got into something, and also to be sure to acknowledge the successes that you've had on a smaller or more local level.
Hello, and welcome to Artists Like Us, where we explore the creative journeys of those that you might pass by every day. Your neighbor, your coworker, your best friend. We're here to shine a light on the artists among us, the ones balancing their passions with the sometimes pleasant and often harsh realities of life. I'm your host, Janita Richards, and together we'll dive into the stories, struggles, and successes of the creative souls who may not be household names, but who make our worlds more vibrant. So let's discover the artistry that surrounds us with the Artists Like Us. And today, the Artists Like Us that I have sitting before me on my screen is Dan Caplan. Dan, how are you?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
I'm pretty good. And am I pronouncing your last name right, Caplan?
Yeah, and actually, this is funny because recently we'll probably at some point get into this later, but I have a scheduling app at my job, and my boss put my name as Dan Caplan, and I've just never corrected her because it's just kind of funny. But yes, it's Dan Caplan, or some know me, Dan Caplan. And actually, there's this R&B singer from the UK whose name is Dan Caplan, but he spells his name Caplen, and I'm Caplan. And I kind of selfishly hope that he doesn't blow up too much, because I just fear like in Office Space when there's the character Michael Bolton, I'm just
yes, of course.
it's I've been Dan Caplan for, 33 years now, so I just, selfishly don't want to deal with that, but, also love to the other Dan Caplan.
No, I get that. That's exactly how I feel with just the name Janita. I'm like, I better not see another Janita get famous before me or something. That would be so annoying. So Dan, you are a photographer. You describe yourself as an professional amateur, is what I was reading in the book that you recently put out. I would love to hear more about how you came up with that term, if you came up with that term, and why you feel it applies to you.
Yeah, that was sort of it's in my Instagram bio too, I think. Yeah, I don't know. I thought it was clever, I guess. That was part of it. But I think the other aspect of it is I'm not a photographer full time. It's not my livelihood. And I don't necessarily think that takes away from what I do, or how good what I do is objectively. To me, I always just sort of saw it as I don't know. I got to collect my thoughts here.
Please.
I should have thought about this more. I guess for me, it's I'm always learning, right? I feel there's always something that you can learn, in any art form, in any discipline or practice. And so I don't know. For me, yes, it's a little bit tongue in cheek. It's me being a little cheeky, but also I think it speaks to the fact that you're always learning something new. Every single day, you're going to be learning something new your entire life. And I think that probably a decade ago, when I started really taking photography seriously, I always sort of had this idea in my head that eventually I was going to get to this place where everything made sense, everything coalesced, and I just got it. And I think that in a lot of aspects, that's true, but I still find myself I don't know, getting tripped up, or questioning something that I'm doing, but trying to see that as an opportunity to learn and to grow, and not as me just being shitty at something, I guess.
No, I do want to say it is very clever. So good on you for thinking about that. It really I feel a lot of people can probably relate to that as well. And just coming to that place where I think everyone had it also thinks oh, there's going to be a point where I definitely have this down pat, but the goalpost always moves. And that's not always a bad thing. I do think being a lifelong learner is something that people should strive to be, because there is always something to learn. There's always a page to turn, no matter where you are in your journey.
Totally.
Do you think that there is a point where you that you haven't reached yet, where you, in your head, that you think that you would stop calling yourself a professional amateur and maybe just a professional?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't necessarily know what that looks like. And I've thought about this a lot, like over the course of the last year as well, where, I think that there are like a lot of like social benchmarks and a lot of like career benchmarks that I think that if you're like an up and coming artist and like it doesn't matter like what you're doing, you think of that as like being like the thing. And I think that, like if I was trying to be, a pop star, I would say like if I can get like the, Spotify video billboard in Times Square, like I've done it, I've made it. And I think that things like that definitely exist like for photography, like, being published, being I don't know, like having an image that you've created like on like a billboard for like a brand or for an artist or whoever it is that you're working with. Yeah, I mean, I guess that like for me, and this is like a total like pie in the sky long shot thing. I guess if I could, do like a photo shoot, do like some album art for like I don't know, like somebody who I really admire, like Justice or something like that.
Yeah, that'd
Like
be pretty killer.
maybe then I take the amateur out of the professional amateur in my bio. But I think that it's also important to kind of remember that like there's more to your practice or more to making art than like necessarily hitting those benchmarks. And I mean, this is something that's like definitely true. Like as I get older, I, have friends who like work in production and I have friends, who are like in like the music production world as well, who have had like a lot of success, like a lot of mainstream success where like, people know who they are, like, random strangers would like, have seen something that they worked on or heard something that they worked on. And that's super cool. But I also think that it's important to remember that like there's more to life than that. And there's more to your artistic practice than that. And that's certainly not admonishing those achievements because obviously that's awesome. If you've worked with Beyonce, that's objectively really, really fucking cool. But I also think that it's important to, I don't know, remember why you got into something and also to be sure to acknowledge like the successes that you've had like on like a smaller or like more local level. Just within the last year, I've been super fortunate to work with a lot of local artists in Portland, Oregon, where I live and work. And just that for me, like being able to look through a photo set and feel accomplished and be like, oh, that's awesome. Like me and this friend of mine made something that's really cool. Earlier this year, I did a photo shoot with my friends Ross and Joey. They have a rap group in town
Are
called
they from
Oaths.
Friends? What?
Yeah, I know. See, and like that thought goes through my mind all of the time, and like somehow like it's never come up in conversation until now. But yeah. So yeah, my friends Ross and Joey from Friends, from Portland, Oregon, are in a rap duo called Oaths. Joey does most of the production. Ross writes most of the rhymes.
Is that oafs like OAF?
Yes, yeah,
Oafs, okay.
yeah.
Oafs.
And so Ross and I know each other because we live in the same neighborhood and met probably like a year and a half ago, just when I was working at the dispensary that I work at in the neighborhood. We connected because I had seen he's also a very accomplished comic book artist and graphic designer. And so he came in and we got to chatting and I was like, I've like seen some of your work like on Instagram, like very recently. And then we followed each other and then like, maybe like a year later linked up and did this photo shoot together. And then when those guys released this new album of theirs that just came out that is called Star Wipe, Ross hit me up and was like, hey man, I want to let you know I like completely overhauled like they've like put it out on CD. And he was like, I want to let you know that we like completely overhauled like the album art and like the CD booklet. And it's like all of like your photos from that day now.
Oh.
So that, yeah, I was like, oh, that's amazing. Like, so that for me was like, this is like one of those benchmarks for me, where somebody who I worked with was like so psyched about something that we did that they said, hey, I want to feature like all of this inside of this like physical product that people can buy when they listen to the album.
No, that's absolutely so cool. I want to touch on you saying just working with artists in your local community, and it means so much because you're just like almost building this you're building just a world. You're building a world of other people that you can collaborate with, other people that you're directly inspired with. And it's so easy to want this level of fame and celebridom. But if you look at it in a certain way, they're doing the same thing. The elites are working with their friends and their community and the people that they like. So it's cool to be able to do that as well, just within your own group, like the people that you favor the most. There's another person I talked to for this podcast, and she works in art and design, and she talks about referencing her friends. And there's another person I talked to who's an academic who also references their peers and stuff. And I just feel like the more we can do that just with the immediate people around us, it's like this different kind of gratifying and satisfying nature that comes from your art. Oh, my favorite photographer is actually my best friend. How funny does that work out? Like, one of my friends just put out a song recently, and I've been listening to it nonstop. I know all the words. I'm like, this is so sick that my good friend just put out one of my favorite songs. Like, what?
And like I can very much like, relate to that experience too, because one of the artists who I worked with this past year is my friend River. River has a project called Ghost Piss. And yeah, Ghost Piss is awesome. They released a record called Dream Girl earlier this year that had been in the works for like, I want to say like probably like 5 or 6 years, they told me. So earlier this year, we shot a music video for the first single from it and did a promo photo shoot for that as well. And I mean, that's just another scenario where like, I don't even necessarily remember how exactly I discovered them. It was definitely like through Instagram or Bandcamp or something. I ended up following them and I was like, this person is like in Portland. And I went to go see them perform for the first time at this event called Troll Fest that wasn't friends with him at the time, but became friends with him after this. My buddy Miles, who also has a project in town called Juice Mouth, organized this like little DIY festival called Troll Fest that happened under this like bridge overpass along the East Bank Esplanade in downtown Portland. So kind of like along this bike trail right next to the Willamette River, right before you get into like deep downtown Portland. And then yeah, like after that, we just kind of ended up like connecting on Instagram, and then that turned into let's shoot a music video together, let's do a photo shoot together. And, it's something that like I told River repeatedly, like kind of throughout like that whole process. I was like, I am genuinely so psyched just to be working with you because I really fuck with this project. And I think that this music is super awesome. And just getting to be involved is super, super cool.
I do want to say the main thing that was running through my head with you talking is you could basically put into Chat GPT, like, can you come up with some really Portland band names? And you would come up with like Troll Fest, but was it Ghost Piss? And what Juice Smash? What was the other one?
A Juice Mouth.
I am not surprised at all.
Another friend of mine, whose name is Anais, who I met through River, has a project in town called Non-Binary Girlfriend, which is also very Portland.
ChatGPT created.
They're awesome. They're awesome as well. I also saw them play a show under a bridge over the summer, so that was pretty cool.
I want to go back to one comment that you said while we were talking, and you talked about not forgetting why you started all of this in terms of like not losing your way and defining your success. And I would like to go back into why you started all of this, because I know you did not study photography in undergrad.
No, I went to film school, and yeah, I mean, I think that kind of getting to the place that I am now, really the entire experience that I had, like going to film school and then like trying to work in production in LA when I lived there for a number of years after graduation, was honestly all pretty like instrumental in like where I am now. Like I was taking pictures, like I started doing this like shortly after college in like the summer of 2014. My friend Emma Markham gifted me her grandfather's old like what was it? It was a Minolta, and it was like a Minolta SLR, and the model is escaping me, but that was kind of like the big jumping off point. When I was in college, I worked on a lot of my friends' like short films, and then went out to LA and was like, I'm gonna, be like a lighting tech. I'm gonna work like in like, the lighting or the camera crew on these productions. And I've had a lot of friends from school who've been really successful in that and are still doing it. They're killing it. But after a while, think that even if I wasn't willing to admit it to myself at the time, I was like, I don't love this.
Mm.
It's a grind. Like being a freelancer is a grind. Like being a freelance photographer is still a grind. But selfishly, I feel like as fun as it is to be a part of a team and to be like a small piece in getting like a larger piece of work constructed, which sounds cryptic, but really it's just like there's all kinds of productions, like there's big ones and small ones and in between ones, and the number of crew members, the number of personnel that you have is like going to vary on all of those. Like obviously, like you know a Beyonce music video is going to look very different than a music video that you're shooting for a local
Ghost Piss.
artist. For Ghost Piss. Exactly, yeah. Like the crew for the video that we did was myself, River, my friend Ari, and then Anais. It was the four of us like for a day, and we just cranked it out. But I think that after a while I kind of started to realize like I don't really have like much of a sense of like authorship of like any of these projects that I'm working on. I'm just kind of like a hired gun, and like that's the game, right? And there's plenty of people who will like ascend the ranks and they'll become like department heads, and that's for them like the dream. And also like for a lot of like production freelancers, like you want to get into a union so that you can get health insurance, because there's a certain point where you're an adult who really needs that. And I never quite got to that point, and kind of was like in and out of that world. Like I'd work like a handful of gigs like every year for like a few years, but was mostly just like otherwise holding down like regular like 9 to 5 jobs and kind of pursuing my own photo stuff on the side. And that's kind of how it's been, honestly, for the better part of the last decade for me. And so I think that, cycling back to the actual question, part of the reason why I wanted to do this was to have a sense of authorship over the images that I was making. And, maybe it's selfish, but just to kind of be able to say like, oh yeah, that's me. Like I made that. And obviously like always giving credit to the folks who helped me. If it wasn't just something that, I snapped on like a point and shoot camera, like out in the world somewhere, if it's like we're doing like a formal photo shoot for a band or for whoever, obviously like giving credit and, giving shouts to the people who helped me, but being able to say like, yeah, I shot this, I lit this, I designed this, and feeling like more than just like, a very small piece in a larger puzzle, I guess.
No, I think that makes sense. And I think it does sound selfish, but I don't think that's a bad thing. I think that that's a bastardized word, but sometimes you do want to do something that brings fulfillment to the self. And it's a real hustle being out there doing lighting when you actually want to be behind the camera, or you want to be the one who's coming up with the ideas. And some people do have the patience and like just the temperament to kind of go through that, and because they kind of want to work in that lane, and some people don't. And I think that's totally fine. Everybody's going to find their own way, whichever way they want to get there. I'm wondering, did that breaking down of the illusion and working that is maybe what drove you a little bit to move to Portland from LA?
Totally. Yeah. I mean, I think that, to be honest, like LA and Portland are like more similar than they're different. Especially,
Really?
yeah. I mean, especially as time goes on. I will say that like having lived, mostly on the East Coast for like the first like 2 decades of my life, coming to the West Coast was definitely, it was a big transition, but one that I'm really, really happy that I made. Like obviously I love the East Coast. I've got a lot of love for New England. I love New York. I haven't been back to New York in a number of years, but I love being on the West Coast. I love the energy of the West Coast and the people, and just kind of like how old and like big everything seems. Like, I can remember like, you like go for like a hike or something in like Connecticut or Vermont or wherever. And if that's like the only experience you have, you're gonna be like, oh my God, like nature is amazing. Like, look at all these like, big trees, etc. But it's like, then you come to the West Coast and you're just like, oh my God, like driving through like Malibu or like driving through like Northern Washington is just crazy. Just the scale of everything. I think that ultimately what kind of pushed my partner Harmony and I to move to Portland, which was it's pulling up on 5 years since we moved, was we just didn't really feel like we had anything that was like professionally tethering us to LA. Like I wasn't working in production full time. I was like working at a rental house, while also kind of like pursuing photo like independently. She was at the time working like at a bakery that she had been at for like 3 years, which was, we both super crazy about like our 9 to 5s and wanted to change. And I think also kind of saw like, all right, hey, it's like, it's about to be a new decade. It's about to be like a new year, because this was like at the end of 2019. So we're like, we went to Portland that one time 5 years ago and we really liked it. Let's go check it out. We have friends there. And we moved and everything fell into place like really quickly. We both got jobs. We found an apartment. We ended up being like across the hall from some mutual friends of my buddy Pete's. And then COVID happened like 2 months later. So, it's a decision that I'm really happy that we made. Like, it's crazy to think about the fact that we've been here for almost as long as we were in LA, but I love Portland. I love the Pacific Northwest. I just really love the West Coast in general. Can't say that I have any plans to, like move to Nevada ever or anything, but
Man, we lost one for life.
damn, yeah.
East Coast Dan down. No, that's awesome. I've never heard anybody say that Portland and LA are more similar than they're different. Granted, I only know at least like maybe 5 people who have lived in both, but that's five enough. So
Totally. Yeah. I mean, I think that like, that's obviously like a little bit of I don't know what the word I'm looking for is here. Maybe that's a bit of a stretch, but like I've lived in both cities and I definitely can see like a lot of similarities. I think that there's like a lot of like cultural crossover. I also remember like moving here and being like deathly afraid that everyone was going to give me shit because I was just another, person coming from Southern California,
damn.
clogging up Portland. But come to find out, like that's at least like half of the people that I've met are like transplants, and like specifically like transplants like from Southern California. I think that like a bicoastal, like a semi-permanent bicoastal lifestyle definitely sounds fun.
Yeah, that's what everyone wants. That's the dream.
Yeah, but it also sounds like, I don't know, and maybe it's just that I'm getting older. It also kind of low-key sounds exhausting. Like I like the idea of I've like been back to LA, I think like 3 times in the last 5 years. And like twice was just like just like vacations. Once was like the beginning of 2022. I worked on my friend's short film, and then ended up getting pulled onto a Charlie XCX video, which was also like super fun.
What video?
It was the video for Used to Know Me from Crash.
Cute.
Yeah, it was super fun. That was a crazy day. That was like, we did like the whole video is like just like her in like a bunch of different rooms. It was one location, it was this like house that was out in Long Beach, and that was like a 16 or 18 hour day. It was wild, but that was super fun and very prescient to think about that now because of just how much she's blown up. And I feel like that was Crash. It was definitely like a record where like I feel like she was kind of leaning into this like sellout persona, which is like, obviously like she's always been a little tongue in cheek, which I appreciate about her. But there's like a shot in the video where she like is like a cheerleader and she like lifts up this skirt and she's got these bedazzled like underwear that say like Atlantic Records on it or something, which I thought was really funny. But yeah, so the point of this ramble, I guess, is to say that I do ultimately think that there's more in common that Portland and LA have, especially just with the way that people kind of like bounce back and forth like between the cities for work, or they like end up moving to one or the other. Like there's definitely like unique aspects to both cities, but I think that in general they just sort of encompass like the far-reaching West Coast aura, if you will.
West Coast aura. I like that.
And I kind of hate myself for saying that, but
no, it's all vibes. Don't worry, it's all vibes.
It's all vibes.
So you were saying that the first camera that you got was an SLR, but now you've been experimenting with digital.
I have.
So how's that transition been?
It's been great, honestly. Like, and I know that you can relate to this as well because you are a photographer. Film has gotten like so fucking expensive, and
Yes.
I think that honestly, like another thing that really kind of, if I'm being brutally honest, like kind of held me back for a number of years was also this like really kind of like elitist like idea that I had where I was like death before digital, like,
Hey.
that's not real. And I'm just like, dude, it's like, it's whatever, man. It's like, it's whatever tool is best for the job. And
Mm,
also like, if you're doing like event photography full time, like, you don't want to be, it's not the 80s. Like, you don't have to
mm,
have some like motorized Hasselblad or some like motorized, like, Nikon SLR where you can like, like pop off like an entire frame of like an entire roll of film in like, 6 seconds and then just like swap to the next one. Like, nah, like you want to have a camera that you can like pop like a crazy large memory card into and shoot like 3,000 photos. It's just whatever is best for the job. I bought a Fuji X100F off of OfferUp like a year and a half ago. And that's just something that I've been like toying around with just in terms of doing like documentary and like reportage photography just in my everyday life. But also it's something that I've like incorporated into these like promo shoots that I've done where I'll kind of bounce back and forth between shooting on like a medium format camera and then just like dupe the settings on the digital camera and shoot with that as well. And it's fun because obviously like with when you're shooting with the film camera, especially like with like a big like medium format camera, we've got like the loud ass like chunk of the shutter and I've got to
mm.
like, like manually focus, like, I think it's cool. And like this thing that I like see in interviews like over and over again is like when there's film on set, people take it more seriously. And like that is like honestly like super true. I did a shoot with my buddy Jeff a couple weeks ago. He has a jazz funk band in town called JC Proof, and also just like sidebar, big shout out to Jeff. Jeff like was
Shout
one
out
of
Jeff.
shout out Jeff. Jeff was the very first person who tapped me to do anything artistic in Portland when I moved here 5 years ago. We shot a music video out in the Painted Hills, and then we've done a photo shoot together for his band like pretty much every year for the 5 years that I've lived here. But it was funny because for the most part, we were shooting on the Dig. And we would be like, all right, let's go for like a film one. And he'd be like, everybody, like, like places, like, this one's permanent. And, so it's like, I do kind of appreciate that attitude where like, yeah, like people take it a little bit more seriously. It's like, you kind of got to be like a little bit more on point about stuff. But at the same time, it's like, whatever is going to give you the look that you want, whatever is the best tool for the job, shooting film for people is great because it enables me to do that and to give them like a product at the end that I'm super psyched on, and I know that they'll be super psyched on. But it's also kind of nice when somebody else is, footing the bill.
Totally.
I
Totally.
just don't, I genuinely do not shoot as much like 35 millimeter anymore because it's just too fucking expensive. I worked at a couple of camera stores the first few years that I lived and worked in Portland. And that was awesome because I would get discounts on rolls of film as well as processing. But it's like, my brother in Christ, a roll of Portra 435 is like baseline, like $20 now. That is too much
It's
money. Yeah. Yeah.
sickening.
Yeah. No, no, thank you.
Yeah, I've toyed with the idea of like buying a scanner just to at least set off those costs. I feel like that would pay for itself at some point, but
Yeah.
haven't done that.
No, I mean, and like people say that to me all the time too. Like when I'll have like friends who will be like, Dan, you're the film guy. Like, where do I go to get film developed in town? And I kind of have this like little spiel that I give them about like the different labs that are in town. But like, I know, like I've just met like so many photographers over the years. And like, there are like people out there who are like, they're so physical about it. Like they're developing at home, they're scanning at home, like pretty much they're like buying like bulk rolls of film and like loading it into the cassettes by themselves. Like there are people out there who have like really done the work so that their costs, like their overhead is like super, super low. And I really admire those folks. And I think that that's super cool. Unfortunately, I am kind of lazy and just sort of want like the speed of like I buy the film, I shoot the film, I bring the film to the lab, they develop it, they scan it, then I edit, then I send it off to people or post it or do whatever I'm gonna do with it. There is a really awesome community darkroom in town called the Portland Darkroom, and that's where we recently had a release party for my photo book that came out in September. They're an awesome resource. There's another small community photo lab that is opening like today in the St. John's neighborhood. They're called Franklin Photo. So eventually at some point here, I will, get over and like actually do like some real darkroom work. But yeah, I gotta buy a scanner just for Polaroids. Not having one for scanning Polaroids has definitely kind of slowed that particular output down for me.
Yeah, you're just trying to take pictures on your phone and like
Yeah, and it's just
hide
like
the glare.
just dealing with all that. I'm like, nah, it's no good. Like the only way to properly exhibit a Polaroid digitally is to like actually have like a real scanner. Yeah.
I want to get into your photo book, Temporary Forever. I guess let's start for how it came about. And by how it came about, I mean like who reached out to you, or did you reach out to someone? Where did you get the idea? I need to have a photo book now.
Yeah. So sort of like the condensed version of like the very beginning of the book is it started its life as a COVID book. My partner Harmony and I were in Portland after like 3 months. COVID hits. We're both not working. I was very fortunate just to be able to, just kind of like lock down for like 2 months before the photo store that I was working at reopened in like May of 2020. But kind of all throughout that time, all throughout the time of the Black Lives Matter protests and just sort of like broader like social justice protests in Portland, I was just always taking pictures. For me, it was both, I think, like a coping mechanism, but also I was just like, why wouldn't I do this? And especially like in Portland, it was pretty weird. Like you would go out and you would just see like this did not make it into the book, but there was a Bank of America in my neighborhood that somebody just like absolutely fucking destroyed like the sign for it and just like tagged all over it. It was like it's kind of low key like being in a movie. It was definitely like a little surreal. And so there was just that aspect of me where I was like also just sort of like the visual signifier of the era of like everybody wearing a mask, which was like not previously something that you like ever really saw in America. Just all of those things, I was like, I felt this like innate need to document that. And so that was sort of like the earliest genesis of the book. But then about a year and a half later, I had sort of like been putting it out there to like people that I would meet, like, yeah, like I'm working on putting a book together, like, yeah, this and that. And it was all very loose. But then when I was working at Pro Photo Supply here in Portland, I met my friend Allison Bowen, who was the manager of the photo lab at the time. And I don't know if I had mentioned something about it to her or if she had heard it from somebody else, but she approached me and she was just like, hey, I am putting together like a small publishing outfit called Borderline Press, and I am interested in putting your book out. So from there, we, met up. I showed her kind of like roughly what I was thinking. It was like 200 photos. There was this day where I went to her old apartment and she had printed out like every single one of the images that I had sent to her. And we arranged them on the floor of her studio and kind of were just like, yeah, we want to keep this one. No, this one's got to go. This one should go here. This one should be like, 2 pages. So that was kind of like the earliest incarnation of that. And then over the course of the next like 2 years, Al and I would meet up. We would make like some like different edits to like the sequencing. Some new images from like 2021 and 2022 got added, and sort of like the overall kind of like theme of the book kind of mutated a little bit. It was no longer just a book about 2020. It had kind of like evolved out from there. And then this past summer, in like late July, she reached out to me, and she and I hadn't really talked about the book in a while. She works at a company in town and is like very busy between that as well as putting out like some other like photo books through Borderline. And she was like, hey, I've kind of consolidated down what I think is going to be like the strongest representation of your work. It was about like 68 images. Here's a PDF, let me know what you think. If you're into it, like, let's go. And I looked at it and Harmony looked at it. And Harmony was like, Dan, this is great. Like, you should just give her the thumbs up. And I was like, yeah, you're right. So from there,
Did she do the order that the photos are in as well?
It was a collaboration, but I have to give Al like so much credit, just in terms of like just having a really strong editorial eye, going back through kind of like the initial like 200 images, there were definitely some in there that I was like, oh man, I forgot about this. But yeah, maybe this wasn't like as strong as something that like did ultimately make it into the book. Al was also like just really instrumental in like selecting like the paper that we printed it on, because she has a background in printing and does a lot of like photo printing. I just think that like just the holding the book in your hand is just like super cool, and it feels very professional, we'll say. But yeah, so she was really instrumental in kind of like condensing down to what we saw. And then from there, I think maybe like a couple weeks after that, I went over to her place. She showed me a couple test prints, and then we did a couple book fairs like in like the late summer and early fall. And yeah, it's been really, really cool, to have something that you've worked on for like 3 or 4 years like finally out in the world. And just getting to hold it is amazing. And like a lot of like my friends have picked up a copy and like reached out to me and like told me like what their favorite images are, and that's been super cool as well.
I am so happy to understand how this all worked, because when you sent over that PDF and I was going through the images, my first thought was this is super cohesive. And I was like, Dan's got a great point of view, like pulling this all together. But then knowing that you went from 200, I mean, not that you don't have a great point of view, but knowing that you went from like 200 images to Allison picking out this very strong number, it makes so much sense. Like just going through the book, I'm a bit of a like I never read introductions to books when I read them. When I like open just like a fiction book or a nonfiction book, I read the introduction at the end. Like if I like the book and I'm like, oh, I just need so much more, then I'll go back and read the introduction. And
Yeah.
like that's how I decide I like something or not. And so I didn't read the little blurb at the beginning
Yeah.
of Temporary Forever. But like when I went through the whole thing and I got the story, and then I was like, oh my goodness, like what is this? I mean, I feel like I know what this book is about, but I wonder what he says this book is about. And I did go back up and I scrolled and I read it and I said, spot on, spot on. Like he's represented himself very well.
Thank you.
Shout out to both of you guys. Um, Scrolling through and looking at the images, I will say it doesn't feel very neutral, which is what some photojournalists aim to kind of do, is explore the world around them. So I'm wondering, do you see your role as a photographer as a participant or an observer?
Something that definitely kind of like came up like both like when the images were being made, but also like in like the broader discussions that Al and I had as we were kind of like going through like the editing process. For obvious reasons, the like initial cut of the book was like way more heavy on like the protest imagery, and we kind of had to have like it was a conversation that I'm really happy that we had, but I think it was one that we were both kind of like nervous to have, which was like this was probably like late 2022. I went over to her place and we chatted about this, and we both kind of were just like, we both said what the other one was thinking, which was like, hey, maybe this needs to kind of like get like consolidated a little bit, because it did, with sort of like a little bit of time passing, I was like, some of this almost borders on like exploitative in my opinion. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that she felt the same way. And we both kind of like, it's like that moment that you have when you're like talking with like a friend or your partner or a coworker or whoever, where like you're both thinking the thing, but you don't want to have the uncomfortable conversation. But then you finally do, and you're just like, oh, awesome. Like we were both
Phew.
thinking the same thing. Like, like you, like it's good to know that like you had the same perspective on it. I can remember that like obviously like the Black Lives Matter protests and just sort of like broader like social justice protests like that happened in 2020 were definitely like a sociocultural flashpoint. And like I know that like Portland and like Seattle in particular like definitely continue to like, I think like let's like in terms of like the cities themselves, I feel like they're trying to shake this image of like, I don't know, like being like a some kind of like cradle for anarchy. And I think that like the city of Portland is trying very, very hard to like move past this image that a lot of people associate with the city because of that time, which is bullshit. But I can just remember like going to like a handful of these demonstrations and seeing a lot of people with like really expensive gear and like standing on bridges with like expensive medium format cameras, and kind of just being a little grossed out by that. And I was there to participate. I believed in the sentiment, And I think that a lot of people were rightly like very pissed off at that time. And I think that, they're still pissed off. But it was something that I wanted to actively participate in, but also document. I was not there for portfolio pieces, which, hey, don't need or have the desire to call anybody out individually. But it's kind of just like, I don't know, man, that's kind of weird. It's kind of weird to like go to a protest or go to any kind of demonstration where you have like a number of people, like hundreds or in some cases like thousands of people who are like marching and like being very passionate about something and chanting and kind of just being there to grab some photos. Like that's just weird.
Yeah, totally. I'm wondering if you would feel different if, say, you were kind of on a road trip and you were passing by and it was a community that wasn't yours. Because I feel like obviously this was not just happening there, these protests and this sentiment was shared across the states at the time. But of course, it's going to feel a lot more personal when it's, around the corner from you. And so I wonder if you would feel as less of a participant and more an observer if it wasn't like your stomping grounds. I
Mm.
mean, there's no way to really know. We're just like hypothesizing now, but
Yeah, I mean, basically, yeah, like you're saying, like if I was on like a road trip and I like passed through like a small town and there was like some kind of protest or some kind of movement happening, yeah, I guess I probably would feel a little bit different. And I also like can't lie, if I saw like some gathering of people as I was like passing through some town that wasn't my own, I would like probably perk up. I'd be interested. I'd want to know what was going on, and I'd probably ask. I don't think that in that situation that I would be like, stop the car, like I gotta get out, like I gotta participate in whatever this is, even if it was something that I was passionate about, like stop the car. I think that it was definitely different because it was happening in the city that I lived in. And but again, like you said, the protests were not like just in Portland. It was like a broader movement that was happening like nationally and internationally a little bit too. That was honestly just like, I mean, obviously like 2020 writ large, but like in particular, like the Black Lives Matter protests was genuinely like a pretty crazy time, just because, you would get on social media and it like didn't really matter like what city your friends were living in this case. And like, you can relate to this too, I'm sure. Like you have friends in New York and LA and like major like metros and cultural centers where like, probably the vast majority of the stuff was happening. If all of your friends, lived in South Dakota, maybe, your feed didn't look like this. But yeah, just like seeing the movement playing out on a national level was very interesting. But I felt probably more like secure, or I felt more impassioned about participating
of
because
course.
it was happening in my city, but also because like I agreed with the sentiment like on like a broader level.
Why did you feel like it was important for you to capture?
I guess like in a way, saying it was a once in a lifetime event is like a little disingenuous, because I feel like it was kind of I feel like the summer of 2020 was like the crescendo of 4 years of this. Like I went to like a handful of demonstrations that happened in LA. Like I went to one like pretty much like immediately after Trump got elected in 2016. And then I continued to go to like events like that, like as time went on in LA. I think that for me, like it did at the time, and this is kind of part of where like the title "Temporary Forever" comes from. It kind of felt like like this is the moment. This is the moment that I'm in, but that like we're all kind of in. And it sort of felt like the rest of my life at the time. Like the moment that we were in with like like kind of like being like in the early days of like COVID, and living through like a national lockdown. Like I think that it felt like it had like an outsized sense of importance, and I felt like I needed to be there. I don't want to I don't want to be disingenuous though. Like I was not like on the ground like every single night.
Mhm.
I believe that there was like 100 nights of protesting, probably like a little bit more. I was not there for every single night. I was there. I probably went out like 5 or 6 nights like total, and it was pretty much all over the course of that summer from like May to like August. And I also don't want to be disingenuous and be like, I was an organizer. I was there. I showed
I
up.
was there.
I was there, but I was there. It was one of those things where it was like it was something that I felt like I needed to participate in, and that I wanted to participate in, mainly because it felt very pivotal at the time. It felt important, and I wanted to be there.
No, that makes total sense. It's also, I think 5 days is still a lot. I don't think that, I don't know.
Non-consecutively.
I think, even so, I think that's a lot. I was not in the States when this was all happening, so it was really different for me. Like, I basically, my only, outside of being Black, my only peek into what was going on was just social media. And it felt so crazy to see. And it was like, is it actually that crazy? Or is it just like what I'm seeing on my phone? Like, it was really,
Right.
really hard to gauge. And even still to this day, I'm like, like, was that like a fever dream? Because I
Well,
wasn't
yeah.
here for it. I
Right.
can only imagine how it felt being here for it.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, like as a white dude,
What?
as a oh, admin reveal. Yeah, as a white dude, as like a white dude at these events, like I definitely, and I think this just sort of like goes for like the way that I like carry myself in public, like at large. I never felt like super unsafe, but I definitely was like a little scared. There were definitely some moments like on some of those nights where I was like, whoa, like this is really happening. Like, oh shit, like there's a lot of cops down here, or like at like a certain point, like the National Guard came to Portland. I do remember that like one of the first nights that my friends and I went downtown, we had like locked up our bikes somewhere, and I remember that like after like an hour, they put up this like police barricade like right in front of where our bikes were,
No.
and so like we were like freaking out. We were like, oh shit, like hey, listen, like if we have to, we will walk like an hour and a half to go home, but that would really suck, and we don't want to do that. And thankfully, we were able to eventually get our bikes back. But like that was a wild night, and I don't think that a lot of these images made their way into the book. But like I remember that like my buddy Simon and I had like climbed onto this like scaffolding that was like next to like the courthouse downtown, and like a bunch of other people had all climbed on top of it. And so like I don't know, low key kind of like lemming perspective, like oh they're all doing it. But I was also like, whoa, there's like a bunch of people that are all climbing up here, like I should do this and I should take pictures of it.
Mm. Not to see, that's a pretty heavy topic, and not to make it like sharp left, but I'm gonna lose it if I don't ask it. But is that you? I guess not, because you're the photographer. But the first photo in your book is someone getting a haircut, but you only see the bottom half of them, and like,
That is me actually. Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
I felt like it was you. I could feel you in the
Yeah,
photo.
that's from like early 2022. My partner Harmony was cutting my hair. Shout out to Harmony for all
Shadow
that she does,
Harmony.
for all that she does. But also for being my like hairdresser for like 4 years in Portland. Yeah, she buzzed my hair on our back porch, and I'm pretty sure that like I think that that's the only image in the book that I did not take.
Okay, who
Yeah,
took it?
she did.
Oh, okay, I see. I
Yeah,
see. I see. Yeah, no, I saw it and I was like, this has got to be him. And this is so weird because we haven't seen each other in a decade, but I was like, those are definitely his legs. Like, I was like,
I'd know
that
those legs anywhere.
pretty much. That's how I felt. But it was a nice introduction portrait of the photographer before getting into everything else. I thought it was a nice touch.
Yeah, that was, I mean, like, I think I definitely, let me put it this way. I gave that image to Allison when we kind of went through and we're like, here, let's like grab like some stuff from like 21 and 22 that like kind of fits like the broader, like, visual and like contextual themes of like what we already have. But it was definitely her decision to put that front and center. Shout out to her.
She's brilliant.
Yeah.
Are all the photos shot on the same camera, or do you got a bunch of different things going on there?
No, they're shot on a couple different cameras, some that I don't even have anymore. But so that was sort of
Temporary forever.
temporary forever. This is like another kind of like sidebar that I like didn't get the opportunity to get into, and like don't start talking to me about cameras because I'll never shut up. But real
He's
fast,
a gear guy.
yeah. So like that was the other thing that just kind of pissed me off about like these people that are just like in downtown Portland to get like portfolio pieces. It's just like, hey, listen, you're clearly not actually participating, so you're not worried if like some cop starts fucking with you and like like knocks your like $2,000 camera out of your hand. Anytime that I was going downtown, I was consciously bringing along just like one of my little like beater point and shoots, because I was like, I want to be quick. I want to be fast, but also if somebody fucks with me, or if, I get caught in some kind of stampede or crowd crush situation, like I don't want I don't want to lose one of the good ones,
Yeah.
or like one of the really good ones. But yeah, the whole book is shot on a variety of like 35 mil point and shoots. There's definitely a couple shots on I have a Minolta X700 that I graduated to after the camera that my friend Emma gave me broke. And then it's definitely like couple medium format joints in there. The haircut photo is taken on my Bronica. So yeah,
Okay.
whole bunch of cameras, some of which I don't even have anymore.
How much editing do you do?
It depends. I think that's something that's definitely like ebbed and flowed a lot over like the 10 years that I've been doing this, because sometimes you get a scan back and, like after like the first thing that I ever do when I'm editing a photo is I like adjust the color profile to like the Adobe profile, because there's like fewer colors, so it's usually a little more saturated. And sometimes I do that and like I'm just like, great, that's good enough. Like that looks perfect. Why would I fuck with this? But yeah, all depends. Sometimes I'll really get in the weeds because like the color's not quite what I want, or like something is like a little too flat, or it's a little too bright. Like it all depends. Which is the other reason why, like, cycling back to like what we were talking about before, the whole death to digital, death before digital like ideology is like stupid anyway, because like everyone is getting digital versions of their film photos. Like everyone's
Yeah.
getting their stuff scanned.
Yeah.
Honestly, like
I'm in Lightroom.
yeah, exactly. I enjoy the editing process. Like I enjoy the shooting process a lot more. Like staring down the barrel of like having to edit like 300 photos is definitely like daunting. But ultimately it's fun. You put some music on, or like you put on a podcast and you just like get into it.
Editing is so important though. I saw a video on Instagram the other day and it was like photography versus real life, and it was someone in beautiful Vermont fall foliage, something like that, and they're like showing a photo that's super saturated and beautiful and then saying, but this is what it really looks like, and the photos were dull. And I just thought that was so disingenuous. We've used that word a few times, because it's like, when you, maybe that's not how it comes across literally, but when you're standing there with looking at all those trees, like that highly saturated image is how it feels. And I feel that sometimes you just need to capture how it felt. Like your eyes didn't take in exactly those colors, but when I'm looking at beautiful fall foliage, it feels unbelievable when I'm there. And sometimes you just need all that, because if you are truly a nature lover, that just takes your breath
Yeah,
away.
totally. Yeah.
I think it's really important. I do want to. Ooh, wait. There's one more thing about the book, but I think I lost it. So
We'll
we'll
circle
talk.
back.
Yeah. Are you making money from photography?
Kind of. So yeah, that's like another thing that like as I've gotten a little older and as I've done this for longer, I've had to be like more realistic with myself about, how much I'm charging. And there was a long time where I would basically say like, here's my rate. And my rate would be like $100, it'd be like $150.
No.
And that would like basically just like cover like the cost of shooting, developing. Then there'd be like a little bit left for me at the end. As time has gone on, I've had to be more realistic about that and be like, listen, you cannot be affording to like, completely take like financial responsibility for everything, especially when you're doing this for somebody else. I get so much like pleasure and gratification just out of like working with my friends and making a really cool image, or like shooting someone's wedding, or whatever the project is. But at the end of the day, like I also have to pay my rent and feed myself, and want to also be able to buy a bunch of other point and shoot cameras that will break. It's important to like be realistic with yourself about that. I think that I'm in like a pretty good place in terms of what I charge. I definitely think that, again, as time goes on, those rates will probably go up, but the rate of everything goes up. So yeah, the short answer is yes, I'm making money, but it's not enough for me to like survive completely.
Is that the goal, to survive completely?
Totally. And I mean, yeah, again, circling even further back to at what point will I just be a professional? When I can completely support myself on like photo, and I'm a budding graphic designer. So like, it's just been like I made some stickers, and like I made a couple like bootleg t-shirts and done like some show flyers and stuff. But that's just another thing that like I'm really passionate about. Like I love fonts, just sort of love the like the printed image or like, like the digital image. I've always loved posters. The audience will not be able to see this, but there's like a bunch of posters that are all on the wall of my
They're
office behind
gorgeous.
me. So yeah, I would say that like long term, to consider myself to be a true professional, it would be making a living on making art.
Do you feel like you're actively taking steps towards that, or is that kind of just something you're thinking about right now and not necessarily putting into action?
I definitely think that like over the course of the last like year and a half, I think that I've definitely taken some more steps. I'm not there yet, but I also think that I'm also kind of getting over this like delusion about like, everybody getting to be like a rich and famous artist. I don't know if you're familiar with Brad Trammell.
No.
Brad Trammell is a visual artist, and he's also like a pretty outspoken like art critic. He has a Patreon where he does these like different like reports. He did one recently called the Hipster Report, which was really good.
Oh my God, haven't heard that word in years.
No, it's so funny. Like what would you even call like what's the well actually in the report he gets into this. He's like, what would you call a hipster now? And he argues that the sort of like the social designation of hipster has gradually transformed into the activist, which I thought was interesting.
Okay,
Yeah.
interesting.
Like Brad Trammell is definitely like a bit of a troll and like a bit of an
Let's write this
edgelord,
down.
but like not in like a Sam Hyde way. I think that like I don't know that I would say that his intentions are good. I find him entertaining. I find him to be like just really just like offensive to artists, but like in like a tongue in cheek way. But he did an art school report recently, this like video essay where he basically talked about the history of art school and the way in which like generations now of like budding artists have been sold this idea of attending art school, and then from there you will become a successful wealthy artist who supports themselves solely on making art, and what a huge fallacy that is.
Absolutely.
And as somebody who graduated from college like 10 years ago this year, I can definitely relate.
Yeah, no, that is for people who are just already rich. You're gonna
Yeah,
come out of art school rich. Yeah, but it's fun. You learn so much.
you do. Yeah. And you meet cool people. Like, I think that like if an 18-year-old came up to me, like I have like some young cousins who are like 14 and 16, and the older one, my cousin Grace, she wants to be an immigration lawyer. So she's like, she's already on the path to doing something a very noble, but also something that will actually sustain her financially. But basically, like if either of them came up to me now, or if like any like teenager came up to me now and they were like, should I go to art school? I would be like, fuck no. Or, if they were like, hey, I want to be an artist, like, should I go to college? I would be like, no. I'm like, you
Mm,
should find a scene. You should like move to a city where things that you think are cool are happening. And it doesn't have to be New York, and it doesn't have to be LA, and it doesn't have to be Portland or Chicago. Like, find a place where there is like a budding scene that you want to be a part of, become a part of that scene, and go from there. I think that college is great insofar as like you meet a lot of like-minded people. I mean, I made friends in college who I hope are my friends for my entire life. I had some wonderful, like life and sort of like perspective shaping experiences, but I didn't need to go to college to do that.
hmm Yeah, I did love college though. And I will say, I think that almost going to college nowadays for anything and hoping to, right now, at least in 2024, going to college and hoping to find like financial success after that is kind of a crapshoot at this point. Like it's in anything,
I
unless
I, I
it's like
agree. Yeah.
classic doctor, and then you'll be, I don't know, in school for
Doctor MBA, like there, I mean, I don't know.
MBA. Even no,
Yeah.
like that is
Yeah.
also like we don't know what they're up to. So I
Interesting.
mean, like
I think
just
it's like one of those things where maybe with the exception of the MBA, the things that classically were going to like get you into like a financially sustainable career path when you and I were starting college are probably still those things. And that
mm,
that was probably the case like when like like my parents went to college in like the late 70s and early 80s, and like before that, you know what I mean? Like
yeah.
in that respect, I don't think that much has changed. I do think what's changed though is that I think that like there's the institutional reach of a lot of these places is a lot wider now. And I think that there's probably increasingly more people who want to go to like art school or music school or what have you. But I mean, you nailed it on the head. It's like if you are from a wealthy family and you went to art school, like you're going to be fine.
Yeah.
That's even if you can't cut it as an artist, like, you know, you will always have something to fall back on.
Also, it's like, I do think, of course, the podcast called Artists Like Us. I'm an artist. I love artists. We need artists, but we also do need plumbers and stuff. So if you are thinking,
yeah, stop.
What do I go to school for? Also, maybe consider picking up a trade.
Yeah, it's like, no, it's like please, like, we don't need more DJs. Like,
literally my first thought. We don't need more DJs, or be a plumber and a DJ.
I saw a really great meme like around the time of that meme, like probably like a year and a half ago, where it was like, guys, like, stop, like, we don't need DJs, like, we need lighting technicians. All of these TV shows are so dark, I can't see anything.
So true. When I was living in Hanoi, my boyfriend at the time, I was a DJ, and my boyfriend at the time was like kind of a budding DJ. And at one point, we were like talking. He's like, there are more DJs in Hanoi than normal people. And I was like, yeah, it's pretty much just DJs and English teachers.
When you mentioned that you weren't in the US during 2020, I was like racking my brain. I was like, where was Janita? Yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah, you lived in Hanoi for a while.
Yeah, that was sick.
That's awesome. Rite of passage. This is also low key like how we met, was when I was playing.
But yeah, you were DJing.
Yeah, I was playing
in college.
playing DJ sets on a laptop hooked up to our friend Shane Williams's bass cab in the garage of what was the Chestnut. I was racking my brain. I was like, you were like an honorary WestCon student. I was going to be like I wanted to say hazelnut. I was like, yeah, the hazelnut fraternity.
Chestnut. That place should be illegal. That was crazy that existed.
That was wild. I mean, yeah, I don't know. It's also funny to think about that. I also like, I worked a brief stint as a maintenance coordinator at a property management company in Portland, where Harmony still works. She's the marketing manager for them. And yeah, thinking back on like some of the shit that went down at that student housing complex, I was like, what a nightmare.
Yeah, that was really, really crazy. I don't know if it's still standing, but maybe.
Questionable. Those were like brand new.
Yeah, like, that was the first year that they opened when we were all there.
It was what Shane, it was like Shane, Adam, and
Misolcheski,
Doobie. Yeah.
And then obviously Jamie and like Christina Mastriani in the other house and stuff. But now that we're getting into names and catching up, we have to end the podcast now. We have to end the episode. I never know how to end these. I'm just like, well, thank you so much, Dan. I'm so gracious for the time that you've spent and chatting. I'm so excited about your book. I am actually going to buy it on my phone right now as soon as we get off, because Apple Pay. This has been awesome. I'm excited to like keep up with you. Just keep posting on the internet because I'm always watching.
Awesome. Janita, thank you so much for having me. As I mentioned when you kind of initially reached out, this is the fulfillment of a lifelong, or at least a decade-long dream to be on a podcast. So thank you so much.
Yeah, so you've got your photo book, you got the podcast. Everything is happening right now. Everything's happening next.
It's all coming together.
All right, well, thanks so much, Dan, and thank you, listeners. Bye. Thanks for sitting down with Artists Like Us. I'm Janita Richards, and I want you to be inspired by the life that's lived by you, because of you, and all around you. Are you our next guest? Submit yourself or a friend at cabbagehouse.xyz/artistslikeus. If you're feeling up to it, leave the show a review and share it with your friends. It means a lot. Stay sweet, sexy, silly, and inspired. I'll see you here next time with another guest just as interesting as the last. Hey, you might even know them. Ciao for now.